The man who does more than he is paid for will soon be paid for more than he does.
That's that's a weighty statement to begin with, Mr. Hill. A very profound claim. Paid for more than he does. It has a certain timeless gravity to it, as if you're stating a law of nature, like physics.
Because it is, Dr. Sinclair. It is precisely that. It is one of the most steadfast laws I have observed in all my years of studying successful individuals. But like many great truths, it is profoundly misunderstood in its simplicity.
Well then, please, help me understand it correctly. For our audience, who might be hearing this for the first time, the principle of going the extra mile, what does it mean in simple terms?
In the simplest terms, it is the act of rendering more and better service than that for which you are paid, and doing so with a positive, pleasing mental attitude. That is all. It is the seed which, once planted, cannot help but yield a harvest of success.
More and better service with a positive attitude. Okay. That sounds like the advice many success coaches still give today. Essentially, go above and beyond, be cheerful about it, and the universe will reward you. That's the common takeaway, correct?
The common takeaway, yes, but often the truth is found in the details and the intent behind the action, not in the action itself.
Exactly. It's the intent behind it that gives me pause. To be perfectly honest, Mr. Hill, when I hear that principle today, a part of my mind, a very modern part, it raises a red flag.
Go on, doctor. This is precisely the kind of exploration I enjoy.
Well, we live in a culture where concepts like burnout have become an epidemic. The conversation everywhere is about the importance of work-life balance. So in that context, doesn't it feel a little, well, like a recipe for exploitation?
Exploitation.
Yes. I mean, imagine a young, motivated employee today. They hear your advice and think, okay, starting tomorrow, I'll stay 2 hours late, I'll do my colleagues' work, and I'll always have a smile on my face. But their manager might just see that as the new standard. The company isn't paying them more. There's no guarantee the extra effort will even be noticed. 6 months later, that employee is left tired, disillusioned, and feeling taken advantage of. They won't be thinking, I'm investing in myself. They'll be thinking, why should I do more work for no more pay? Isn't this a principle that, in practice, benefits the employer far more than the employee?
That is a perfectly valid and critical observation, Dr. Sinclair. A valid one, if we were to assume that the principle's ultimate aim is to please one's employer. But it is not.
It's not? On the surface, it appears to be entirely that. You're performing work beyond your contract for a company you do not own. How could the aim be anything else?
Because you are investing in the only asset that no one can ever take from you. You are investing in yourself. The first and primary beneficiary of this law is the individual. The employer is merely a secondary recipient of the benefits.
That is a very interesting reframing. So you're suggesting it's actually an act of selfishness, an intelligent, long-term selfishness.
Precisely. The most intelligent form of self-interest a person can practice. Perhaps a story can illuminate this better than any argument.
I'm always ready for a good story, Mr. Hill.
Very well. Years ago, I knew a young man. Let's call him Thomas. Thomas was hired as a junior filing clerk at one of the great steel corporations. His job was, well, it was exactly what the title implies. He sorted leathers, filed reports, and delivered documents to various departments. a job that thousands of others performed every single day. His pay was negligible.
A perfectly ordinary start.
Perfectly. But Thomas had one distinguishing quality. He performed his duties with such speed and precision that he often had an hour or two of free time at the end of his day. Now, what does the average employee do in that situation?
Look busy, browse in his day, probably stare out the window and watch the clock until it's time to leave?
Exactly. But Thomas did not. He would get up, walk to his supervisor's desk, and say with a genuine sincerity, devoid of any flattery, "Sir, my own work is complete. Is there anything I can assist you with?" At first, his supervisor was taken aback, perhaps even a bit suspicious. But this happened every day. Slowly, the supervisor began to assign Thomas small, unimportant tasks from his own desk, checking columns of figures in a report, drafting a simple letter. After some time, Thomas had not only learned his own job, but he had also absorbed a significant portion of his supervisor's duties. He was no longer just a clerk. He understood where these documents came from, where they were going, and what they meant to the organization as a whole. He had begun to learn the grand blueprint, and no one had asked him to.
And he was doing this extra work for no extra pay.
Not a single penny more, but he was acquiring something far more valuable: knowledge. The story continues. He noticed that the internal mail distribution system between departments was slow and inefficient. During his lunch hour, he observed the routes, spoke with a few of the mail runners, and one day he approached his supervisor with a simple one-page memo, a plan that showed how a small change in the delivery path could speed up the entire process by half an hour each day.
That is definitely not in the job description of a filing clerk.
Not in the slightest. His supervisor, who by now had grown to trust his intelligence and his intent, presented the plan to the department manager. It was implemented, and it worked. And now, it was not just his supervisor who knew Thomas. His name had been mentioned at the department management level, not just as a diligent clerk, but as someone who solves problems. He had gone beyond his duty, and as a result, he had captured the attention of men who had power far beyond his current station. He was building an invisible ladder for himself, while others were merely staring at the floor.
So Thomas's story is a classic workplace success story. He worked hard, he acted intelligently, and in the end, he was lucky enough to be noticed by the right person. The key to his success was that moment the department manager saw the one-page memo. If that manager had ignored the plan, or worse, taken credit for it himself, all of Thomas's efforts could have amounted to nothing. Isn't that so?
No. No, Dr. Sinclair. That is the very misconception that most people have about this law. Being noticed by the manager, that was the reward, the icing on the cake. But the cake itself had already been baked long before that moment.
What do you mean?
I mean that even if that manager had thrown Thomas's memo in the trash that day, Thomas would not have been a failure. He had already won. People think the reward for going the extra mile is the promotion or the raise. Those are secondary rewards. The primary reward is what happens inside the individual. Let us look at the three assets Thomas had already accumulated for himself long before that promotion. First, and most obviously, the investment in his skills. With every extra task he took from his supervisor, he was essentially receiving free training. He was learning junior management, business correspondence, and problem solving. He was no longer a simple clerk who moved paper. He was becoming a multi-skilled professional whose value in the open market, regardless of that specific company, had increased immensely.
He was building his own invisible resume?
Precisely. Second, the investment in his influence. By solving the problem with the mail system, he didn't just fix an issue. He introduced himself as reliable and innovative to dozens of people in other departments. He was building reputational capital, a currency that makes others want to work with you and help you. That is a network that money cannot buy. And the third and most important investment, which is the hidden wisdom of this law, he was investing in his own mind. He was training his brain to automatically look for opportunity, not for an escape from work. He was cultivating the habit of excellence.
The habit of excellence?
Yes. When you cultivate this habit, you no longer need conscious effort. Your mind becomes naturally allergic to mediocrity. In everything you do, from writing a simple email to executing a major project, you will seek the best possible version. This habit is what separates you from 99% of other people. And it is at this point that you activate another of nature's most powerful laws in your favor.
And what law is that?
The law of increasing returns. Under normal circumstances, you get back what you put in. 1 unit of effort yields 1 unit of result. But when the habit of excellence and going the extra mile becomes second nature, that equation breaks. Your 1 unit of effort begins to return 2 units of result, then 4, then 10, because reputation, skill, and opportunity build upon each other exponentially. Being noticed by that manager wasn't a stroke of luck. It was the inevitable result of this law being put into motion.
The law of increasing returns, that reframes everything. It transforms the entire concept from a short-sighted, unfair transaction into a long-term, deeply personal strategy.
Please, elaborate, Doctor. I am fascinated to hear how this concept translates in your modern mind.
Well, it goes back to my initial concern about exploitation and burnout. With this new perspective, you're no longer saying that employees should blindly work more hours just to please a boss for a potential reward. What you are describing, it's like viewing that extra time and energy as a private masterclass, a personal laboratory for skill acquisition.
A personal laboratory. Yes, that is a beautiful way to put it.
Exactly. Thomas was paying his tuition to the University of Success at the steel company, not with money, but with his extra-mile effort. The knowledge he gained belonged to him, not the company. Even if he had been fired, he was no longer a simple clerk. He would have carried his skills and his reputation with him to the next company. In fact, this principle becomes a defense against exploitation, not an invitation to it, because by increasing your own intrinsic value, you dramatically increase your leverage and your options for the future.
You have captured the very soul of the principle, Doctor, truly. And what is remarkable is that this law in your modern world of freelancers, entrepreneurs, and personal brands is 1,000 times more potent than it was in my age of steel and railroads.
Why? Because of the internet?
Precisely. In Thomas's time, his reputation was confined by the physical walls of his company. But today, a programmer who builds a small useful tool for the community in their spare time and releases it for free, a graphic designer who over-delivers for a client and that client posts one single glowing tweet about them, an employee who shares a creative solution to a common problem in a LinkedIn article. These are all extra-mile efforts that are no longer trapped in a closed environment.
They become global in an instant.
In an instant. And they activate the law of increasing returns at a speed that was unimaginable to us. You are no longer waiting for one manager to notice you. With every intelligent extra-mile effort, you are exposing yourself to hundreds, thousands of potential managers, potential clients, and potential collaborators across the globe. You are investing directly in your own brand, and that is the most powerful asset in your modern economy.
This has been a fundamental paradigm shift. So for the person watching this right now who is convinced and is asking, okay, where do I start? What is the first practical step?
The best way to build a great habit is to take one small, almost invisible step. So my advice is a simple challenge for this week alone.
We're listening.
This week, find just one small task, something that is not in your official job description, but you know would benefit the entire team, the project, or the organization's larger mission. Perhaps it's organizing a confusing shared folder on the server. Perhaps it's finding the answer to a question a colleague is struggling with. Perhaps it's writing a one-page guide for a repetitive process that frustrates everyone.
A small, useful task.
Precisely. And now, the crucial part. Do it voluntarily, without being asked. Do it with a positive attitude, not with a feeling of being victimized. And most importantly, do it without announcing it. The goal is not to be immediately seen or applauded. The goal is to prove to yourself that you are the kind of person who goes beyond what is expected. You are performing an exercise for your own character, not a performance for others. Just once this week. That is the first step.
It's brilliant. So, in the end, it all comes down to this. Going the extra mile isn't about forced, resentful overtime on a weekend. It's not about flattering your boss. This principle, it's like the athlete who stays on the court after practice has officially ended, when everyone else has gone home and just shoots free throws for another half an hour. They're doing it for their coach. They're doing it so that in the championship game, when everything is on the line, their hand won't tremble. They are investing in their own future victory. That's the whole story, an investment in the champion they intend to become.